Welcome to the Oh So Spurs podcast, where we have an episode I've been super excited about. We are joined by Anton McElhone, who, if you don't know him, was a fitness coach at Spurs, working for Redknapp, AVB and the Poch eras, a few interim managers in between that as well, and recently Postecoglou's head of sports science during the famous treble period. He's also an A-licensed coach, but most importantly, he is a Spurs fan. How are you, Anton?
Very good, James. Thanks very much for having us on the show.
No, pleasure. Well, delighted to have you on. We've been really excited with this one, and we've had endless questions that I won't be able to get down all of.
But, I'll try my best to answer as best as I can.
Thanks. And I guess you can imagine a lot of them are going to are around Postecoglou and the fitness situation at Spurs. But also, before we were live, it's great to hear about a few things, behind the scenes at Spurs. We talked about Dele Alli and how much of a hard worker he was. So it'd be great to just top it off with some of those areas. But so we'll start off just quickly before we go into the finer questions, Anton. Where's your head at with the current situation at Spurs as someone who's worked with Ange, worked with Poch, worked in the SPL, worked in the Premier League? What's your view on things?
It's a really interesting one, and I'll tell you a little story. When I was at Celtic, probably in the last 6 months, so when we were on the route for the treble, obviously, big Spurs fan, still speak to people at the club, and I was in contact with a member of staff who was a friend, and obviously Conte had left the club, and it was like I said, this guy is the perfect fit for Tottenham. And we spoke about it on WhatsApp and stuff, and it was crazy because then it grew arms and legs, and then at the end of the season, obviously he leaves Celtic and joins the club. So I was delighted in one way, sad in another. But again, I think it's a fantastic appointment by the club. He is there to rebuild the club. Let's not forget about that, and that's what he does very well. So if you look at his history, Celtic, in Australia, Japan, he goes in, he is going to rip the place up to get what he needs. I think looking at year one, I think it was a little bit of all the alignment was just perfect. The players that had been there previously want to play this style, new manager, and it was a little bit of a fast forward. They get a lot of early success with the wins in the style, but it does tell we're not there yet. We're nowhere near it. We didn't qualify for Champions League. I think he knows where the team was going. I think there was a little bit too fast because this season you're seeing what historically would be his first year. So if you read about him in Japan, he's a really tough first year in Japan. They're close to down the bottom, but second season he wins the league. So again, we did have a tough first 6 months at Celtic, really tough first 6 months. But he turned the corner, as we know, and we won a double that year, and then went on to a treble. So if and when he can get that first trophy, which I believe he can, but the fans need to be patient. It's a great club. They've got everything, but he needs to be allowed, from me, that he can bring the players that he wants. Because if you look at Celtic and all the other clubs, his recruitment was second to none. Whereas at the moment, there's maybe a little question mark with there's a lot of young players getting brought. The players that he's brought in at the right age are fantastic, but they need to step up. The Madisons, and they need to be playing week in, week out because they're 28, 27, 28, so they need to be carrying the team. It can't be the young players or the old players. So I think it is very positive. It's very difficult. I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions about the fitness and why, but there is good reasons, and it's honest reasons. It's nothing bad. It's sometimes there is luck, but I think if the club can get through the coming weeks, get to the final, it could be a very positive season for the club in the long term, and then it will all disappear. You'll forget all about what happened. But it's not the first time it's happened at Spurs. At my time as well, Harry had it, lots of injuries. And I worked with him for 1 year, which was rehab coach, and there was injuries galore. We had lots of injuries, lots of hamstrings, lots of senior players. So it's not new in football, but obviously managed AVB, it reduced a little bit, and under Mauricio, the type of injury changed, but it happens at every club.
So when I'm going off script already, but when you were with Harry, was that the year we signed Van der Vaart?
Yes. So I think it was Harry's last year. So that was, we finished fourth, but we got knocked out the Champions League qualifiers because Chelsea won the Champions League that year, which was devastating. So it was one of the ones, change of staff, head of sports science had moved to Man City, the number 2 moved up, I moved into the rehab role. It was a tough season, because you've never worked with injured players, and the boss tells you right? Don't let them get re-injured. And I think the first two players that I worked with that year were Lennon and Defoe, and within 2 weeks they'd both get re-injured, and it was
no.
oh my God. So, if you imagine that your first job, not at first team, but at Tottenham's first team, big job, and it was probably the toughest year at Tottenham in 10 years, I think year 4 or 5, and you're trying to get, you had Van der Vaart, Dawson, Kabul, Ledley King, we had
Oh, you
big
worked with
squad.
Ledley King?
Yeah, we worked with Ledley, so you imagine all the players that we had, top players, but there was injuries. You would have 4 and 5 injured every week. And the next one would come in, the next one. Very similar to what you see now. When the manager's got them available, he's got to play them. That's what he gets paid to do. But obviously it's a little bit tougher at the moment, I think maybe due to quality, what he's got as well.
Well, I'll dive in with the most question that came up the most. And it's, I guess you're going to know exactly what it is. It's these injuries that we're having with Ange right now. Mm-hmm. How much of it is down to the way we play? Mm-hmm. And there's a second part to the question, because there is an answer to that you'll give, but also how he's managing those injuries, because the fan base is so divided. Some are saying, what's he supposed to do? We're in this cycle of injuries, and the worse that compounds, the less he can do, and then the problems compound further. But if we go back to the first bit, how do you see it? Is this all on Ange's tactics causing this?
No, right, let's get to the reason why he's here. He's here to win trophies. This is a manager that's coming to Tottenham not thinking, I want to get Champions League. This is a manager who will be thinking, I want to win trophies and I want to be number one. He's been number one at everywhere he's went, and I know we'll talk about that in different countries, but he will be focused. The players that he recruits are based on that. So he's brought Brennan Johnson, he's got the Solanke, he's got strong, powerful players. Want to win titles. So if you look at Man City or Liverpool, who have won it, or even the teams over the years, they score more goals than everybody else. Goals equals points. So if you looked at the moment, that is how he knows how to win games. Now, at the moment, the rest of the game philosophies maybe not being there because of injuries and stuff. So that will get there. It happened at Celtic. It got over the hump. Now, is it due to the game? It's a yes and no question, right? The style of the game is frantic. And at Celtic, the first 6 months, it was like a basketball match. They go, we go. Now, the difference in Scotland is other teams are maybe not get the quality of the Premier League. We know that the Premier League has got the best players, the best teams, the best managers. So there is more opportunities for teams to have a go at you. And I think that's what happened this year. But the point is it's not because of the game style. If you're in control, in the opposition half, dominating them, it's smaller sprints. But the problem is we're not, I think in the game again, the weekend there, we've not won the ball, then it ends up going in a break, there are big gaps. The point is if everybody does the job that he's asking, then it doesn't become a basketball match. So the point is he's got to make sure these players follow the style that he wants. And I think there's nothing the matter with it because it wins matches and it wins trophies. And he knows the success, and he knows, I think he's quoted in it as saying, he knows what's behind when you get beyond this, he knows the road to success. He knows what is there if the players can overcome the hiccups at the moment. And I think that's the thing. He's very headstrong. So it's one of these ones. It's a rocky roller coaster. But if everybody is relaxed and patient, which I think everybody at the club is, hence he's still in a job. But it's one of the ones, if they can get through it, there's light at the end of the tunnel. And I think it's how they train. Listen, Ange does not overtrain players. Ange is a dynamic coach, a very forward-thinking manager. He knows his sports science. He's very sharp. He's had a lot of good people working with him over his career. I think there is a little bit of luck. There is a little bit of being in football, when there's a doom and gloom around the place, it catches on. Like he jokes about, like somebody gets injured when they shoot. It's sometimes just that. There's a book, Malcolm Gladwell, and he talks about, that you get grey walls, so you end up feeling a little bit more depressed. There is that part. I think it's becoming all conquering, but he's the best man to motor on. He will just keep going, and I think that's what you see he's doing at the moment.
The term that's used on Ange a lot by the media in particular, particularly ones who want to get a bit of a rise out of Spurs fans, but also now our own fans use it as well. Mm-hmm. And look, I'm meant to be really neutral on this, but I'll just be transparent that I am a Postecoglou fan and I desperately want it to work for him. but I'll try to remain independent of my questioning. But the word that makes my blood boil, and I'm sorry to use that term, is naive. Because I think, before I actually caveat this and make it a biased question, is there naivety in Ange's thinking in your opinion? Because you're an A-licensed coach, right, as well. You mentioned he knows his onions when it comes to injuries and rehabilitation. Tactical-wise, is it his downfall that there's this one philosophy, all-out attack, and there's... Because I personally see adaptations going on in games, and other people say he doesn't adapt. I'm keen to get your view on that whole message from the media on that topic.
I think, and this was my own opinion, so at Celtic, we had a great first season. You can see the progress year two. The team is flying. We played Real Madrid in the Champions League. Yeah. And I'm thinking, listen, you're going to go to the Bernabeu, you've got to play defensive. And I'm speaking to one of the analysts, and he's not going to change it. He is. And I'm like, he can't do that. We went there. At home game, we lost 3-0, but we played outstanding. And he absolutely ripped the players in the meeting the day after, 2 days after, about just been happy with getting beat 3-0. He wants to go and play a style. So it's not that it's a negative. Mauricio, 4-2-3-1. Sometimes played a back three when injuries came. Yeah. I think year 3, year 4, we went to a back three when you had Alderweireld, Vertonghen, Sanchez, because the wingers we lost Lamela and so on. So managers know what they want to do. They're very clear. He does adapt. So I think at Celtic in 2 years, twice changed the system. 4-3-3 and it went 4-2-3-1. I think we were in COVID and we had no team like he'd done against Everton. He tweaked it, but he will not muck about with it. The structure and the principles, everyone in life, clear. So at the end of the day, you don't want your manager chopping and changing every week. Now, it's different if you are a lower level club in the division. Your aim is don't get beat. You have to do that. You have to go to the opposition. But with Ange, we are there to dominate with and without the ball, playing the front foot. We want to win. He is there to win and win only in a certain style. So that's why it's not that it doesn't deviate, but it was a fantastic 2 years to watch a manager always come back to how can we improve, what can we do better, rather than throw everything out the pram because it's not going right. Now, sometimes you might need to be adaptable, but he is adaptable in the small intricacies of players' positionings and stuff. He understands it. He knows, the inverted wing backs. Not every game you might see it. The inverted fullbacks are fully in. It's maybe tweaked a little bit here and there in certain games, but he's very smart, very knowledgeable football manager.
Because this is a bit that confuses us fans as you sit from the outside, right? We conceded a lot of goals at that back post. Yeah. Porro gets a lot of flack for it.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, he doesn't see that. But he must see it, surely, right? He must be addressing it. He must have a view on that.
Of course, listen, he's got Matt Wells, he's got Ryan Mason. These are top coaches. He's also got the guys that come in the summer. Listen, they've got excellent staff. They will be working in every detail till the cows come home. But sometimes it's just the players that you've got. So Pedro Porro is a phenomenal player, like going forwards, but might have a weakness at times defending. Like Andy Robertson gets a lot of stick at Liverpool. But the point is do you want to focus on the negative or do you want to focus on the positive? There is that part. Of course, they will work on it. But it might be that Ange, I think, as you've seen this year, Maddison's been dropped, Basuma's been dropped, Sar's been dropped. That if he's not happy with you,
he'll drop you, yeah.
And that is good. He's clear. So I think within time, if he has got two, so at Celtic, and this is different league, but at each position he had two top players pushing each other on the Juranovic, Alistair Johnson at right back, Cameron Carter-Vickers at centre back with other centre half. That we had for Scotland, we had a Chelsea, Man City like squad, and that was because Ange had doubled down and made sure that it was top players in each position pushing each other. So if he didn't play well, he's looking and going, right, you're in. So the levels rose. So I think that's the tough one with the defending. It will improve, will settle, but I think there's no better man, fighting the fire, because I think any other manager at Spurs might have lost his job by now. And also things become negative, and you don't win games playing negative. You will only get so far with that, and everybody moaned about Conte, everybody moaned about Mourinho, but we want to be a front foot team. For me, that's what Spurs is all about.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, people always talk about, oh, well, we'd sacked Conte for less and whoever else for less. But it's like, yeah, but there's a big difference. Ange wants to be here and he's trying to rectify it, whereas some of those previous names were engineering an exit potentially,
Yeah, of course.
or had already gone to war with their boss's boss, which is a very dangerous thing to do in football, and especially in public. So, but the other thing I'm interested to know as well is there's actually, I've got two questions. I'll ask this one first so I don't forget it. But if you can't answer it, that's fine. But I assume you still have mates around Spurs and stuff. Do you get the impression like it's do or die every week now to save his job, or do you feel there's still buy-in from the club? And I include like coaches, everyone to make this work.
I was lucky when I was in Istanbul when to watch Tottenham versus Galatasaray. So I was lucky to go with Brad Friedel. We went over and watched the game as an ex-Tottenham player. We went and watched, obviously, because we what's the fans of the club. Spoke to staff when they were up in Glasgow against Rangers. The mood is still can be done. Everything's positive. Of course, it's very disappointing when you've got injuries, you're losing games. It is very tough. But I think if you look at the players, as the manager says, they're still performing. I know that Everton was disappointing, but it's if the second half of Everton was really poor and you don't get goals, then it would have been different. But you've seen at least a turnaround, as you've seen in all the games. The players are willing to do it, but as he says, all the clubs, it's never an easy ride. To be Man City is not easy. You've got to do special things. Tottenham have been close, and they're great teams, great managers, and it's going to be tough again. It's not supposed to be easy. If it was that easy, everybody would be doing the same thing. And the injuries have cost us 100%, but it will get better, I think. If you've seen him at the weekend, he doesn't want to play players, but he is that type of manager. He will go with his best players. And why would you not? So at the end of the day, would the Spurs fans be happy if we play the under-21s team? They'd be going up in arms saying it's disrespectful to the league and so on. So
we had that last year, though. Everyone forgets, but there was uproar when we went out the third round of the FA Cup because we played overly rotated, in inverted commas. And people say you should always play your strongest team. Now he's always playing his strongest team, and the downside to that is, overloading players at times and getting more injuries, and people want to see more kids. And on that note, and we're bouncing all over the place with this, but I just want to keep it on topic as well. But a lot of people are saying like, oh, why doesn't he play, let's just say Will Lancashire or another youth player? Do we as fans have a fair representation of how big the jump is from that level to the senior team, or do you think he should be playing these youth players more?
No, I think that the commentators they're playing like an under-21s team. If he plays his under-21 team, it's going to get worse because there is such a difference between under-21 football and senior football. So you go back to the Masons, the Kanes, the Townsend, all these top players. They had 3 loans, 4 loans, 5 loans to bridge the gap because the team was very good. Harry had a great team. Harry gave debuts to a lot of players, Harry Kane's and so on. So
Danny Rose,
who's a top player, but Danny Rose had to go Bristol City, Swansea, I think, Bristol City, Yeovil to get his loans to get a game. Jake Livermore, Stephen Crockett, they all had to do it, but it's very tough. So if you play the young guys, you can't do it if you don't have the spine of the team. The point is the spine of the team's injured at the moment, goalkeeper, centre-halves. If you've got a strong spine, you can play Mikey Moore, you can play Lancashire, you can do these things, but it's very tough. So I think it's really, really hard to play the young players. I think it's really tough.
Yeah, and the other thing that gets bounded around a lot against Ange, and they're talking about leaps in, levels, is, his tactics worked in Japan, they worked in the SPL, and they can't possibly work in the Premier League. And by the way, I hate that because it just feels a bit like Premier League fan on their couch is telling a coach with multiple licenses and qualifications that they're a naive idiot, which is way out of whack, and I get that. But trying to take that emotion out of it, do you feel his tactics are translatable? Because you've worked in the Premier League and you're a licensed coach, you know more about this than most of us listening. I'm interested to get what your view is on that.
I think the tactics and the philosophy will 100% work. But it always comes down to the players that you have. Recruitment, is the recruitment good enough? So yes, in Scotland there is a difference in level. But the recruitment for Scotland was outstanding because he brought in players who were unknown, low cost, high value. Matt O'Reilly goes to Brighton. There's players that have been sold for vast sums to other clubs. So I think definitely the structure works, but it's players. So if you go back to Harry Redknapp's time, we had a gluttony of international stars, not young kids. Like Jake Livermore, Danny Rose, these guys couldn't get in the team. They were damn good. Van der Vaart, Crouch, Defoe. Let's go. Let's go centre halves. Kabul, Dawson, King, and that's just three off the top of my head. And there's a Bassel who might have been. Nah, he's not good enough. But Jonathan Woodgate. That was just some of your four centre halves. They were England's top players. So you go midfield: Jermaine Jenny, Scott Parker, Luka Modric. The list went on. Of top English players, but top European players. So I think at the moment you can see that he's tried to bring the right players in. Solanke, Maddison, but there's also been a little bit of the Spurs back in the day of going for young players. It takes time. Bales, come on, remember we all know what happened to Bale. Bale's nearly away. Never, if it wasn't for guys like Benoit or Ekotto going into left back, Bale never probably gets to the levels that he wants at Tottenham. So I think at the moment at Tottenham, the recruitment has been good, but I think Ange's normally has maybe more of a say. That would be outside looking in. I think that you could see there's certain players that you can see the Solankes, you see the Johnson, you see the players. He wants attacking players because why did we not win the league under Mauricio? We couldn't beat Chelsea. We didn't beat West Ham. We didn't beat defeat. You have to win games. You need more points on the board and you need to score goals. So at the moment, have we got enough goals in the team? So at Celtic, 2 left wingers, 2 right wingers, 2 number 9s, 2 8s and 10s. We had goals all over the team. So we scored 100 goals. Like Pep does, look at the points to goals. Liverpool were the same. Look at Liverpool's Salah, Firmino. They had the front 3, then they had the 2 8s. They scored goals and could keep clean sheets. At the moment, it's the clean sheets. We're too exposed. It's not to do with tactics. It's about players doing what they're supposed to do. And I think some players need to do a little bit more.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. So to summarise it so far, he does know what he's doing when it comes to rehabilitation. Because I had questions about does he in post sessions manage the sprints correctly and those kind of specific.
That's not his job. That's not his job. Ange is a fantastic manager because he delegates. Sir Alex Ferguson was the best British manager and one of the best in the world. He delegates to his staff. That's why he brings experts to the club. Tottenham is full of experts. So they've got top people. He will give the autonomy to do their job.
Yeah.
If it doesn't go well, he will then call people out. Why is this not happening? But Ange, because I know one of the questions that everybody goes on is he involved in training? But Ange sees everything. Ange is like a drone, a helicopter. He is there to make sure he knows what's going on. If he's busy, picking up cones, how can he see what's going on? So Ange is on the pulse every day.
So he will be observing from a distance.
Not a distance. Ange is there every day. No different to Mauricio. No different to Harry. Harry never trained the team. Joe Jordan, Kevin Bond did. With Mauricio, it was Jesus that done the training. Mauricio would do the tactical days like Ange does. The difference is what day of the week they do the tactical work. That's the big difference. So Ange's at Celtic, he would watch the training like Sir Alex, stand in the background, watch, observe. If things are not right, he'll tell the assistant manager, whoever, me, get that done. He is in control, but that's what a manager does. The manager doesn't have to be doing the warm-up and doing the extras at the end. That's why he's got a team of coaches. And he delegates and he manages staff, and he's one of the best that I've seen.
Yeah, and it's all facts of life, right? I even have it in my job now. When I worked for a startup, I was doing everything myself. I was doing the marketing, I was the salesperson, I was the manager, I was this, that, and the other. But as I go into bigger companies and my roles change, I'm like, great. The person who now does the marketing with me is 10 times better than I could ever be because that's all they do. Great. That's infinitely better scenario than me doing it. I'm grateful I've had experience of doing it so I can, and I think the same goes to football management, right? It's like, you will always know more about the intricacies of player fitness and sports science than, your typical manager, the first team coach, unless that was their background before, whatever, maybe there's an exception, but you know what I mean? And equally, there'll be someone, the CFO is always going to know more about finances than you running that side of the club.
Correct.
If you don't try to do it all and control it all, it doesn't make any sense.
Ange tactically, technically, is up there. He knows his stuff and he can get it on the... You've got to imagine a manager that goes to different countries and clubs without budgets of Pep and Mourinho's and stuff, or Conte, can go to each continent and produce the same style of entertaining football that wins and is the same, but with different people, different countries, different languages, is highly impressive, especially when it's only you as the manager that goes there. That is something I've never seen. And that's where, when you work with him, you understand why, because it's all about, like Simon said, it's about the why. Ange is all about building the dream, building the vision, and guiding the team on that journey. The how, he lets his coaches deliver X, Y, Z, but he is extremely comfortable in being the manager. And if you're in his presence, that's why he's called the boss, because you feel the presence and the aura of, he knows exactly what he's doing. He doesn't want people in his ear. He doesn't want me running out, like telling him about X, Y, Z. Give me facts and figures. I'll tell what needs to be done in correspondence to the information I'm given. That's what he's a problem solver.
Interesting. Well, and on different people's responsibilities, there was one moment in particular when Romero and Van der Ven, we didn't expect to see them in the lineup for the Chelsea game. And everyone, as an outsider who has no experience in, sports fitness beyond school or whatever, that seemed like a risky decision. I felt like, oh God, that could result in 2 injuries. Yeah. And then they obviously do get injured. And the questions go, did the manager put pressure on the medical team to make that happen? Or would the medical team have said they're fit to play? And can the manager overrule what the medical team want? How does the kind of decision-making for those situations
It's a good question.
work?
It's very complex, because every manager at every job is got the same problems. Every game is important. The thing was, obviously, it was a huge game. You've got the players. Now, the thing is football managers, whether it's Harry, Mauricio, when the player is back on the training pitch, the understanding usually is he's available for selection. That's what you would understand. If he's fit to train, can I play? Yes. Normally, 9 times out of 10, that will be the case. Sometimes you have players who's maybe come back from a serious injury, 6, 9, 10 months. They might be allowed 3, 4 weeks to return to training. So return to training, return to play are 2 different things. So I think on it, it's difficult. I don't think you can defend it, because he explains in the post-match interview, that they were touch and go maybe, and it was a big risk. That's football. Now, it's at Tottenham, you could have had, and this is something that we learnt, was you could have the best injury record, sitting bottom of the league. This is high-level football, high performance. High performance is pushing boundaries. So sometimes you have to push the envelope to get wins. Man City have got lots of injuries, but they have to push to get titles and victories. So I think there is that element where he has to do it as a manager. But I think like that, it backfired on that day. You're on the TV, there's lots of things. I don't think it did work. But every manager in the country will be doing that. They don't overrule the department. So it's not as if he says, look, that player's playing. There was instances even going back to AVB's time with players shouldn't have been playing games, played the game, came off. It's because they weren't right maybe in the first place. I think in the case where the players were fit and available, but the problem is it's depending on the injury, the type, it might become difficult for the players. And that's the bit that I do understand, that the game style is harder. So if you're in the halfway line, we're not going to drop off. Maybe under Harry's team would have dropped off a little bit more, but they had Scott Parker in the middle there, hoovering everything up. But at the moment, who's the player? So if I go back to Pochettino, Wanyama. Wanyama was the guy for a season who destroyed everybody. Who in the moment in the team protects the back two, so that doesn't get to there. So at Celtic, we were very good at winning the ball, but so it is on the tactics. But what I'm saying is it's hard because you need the players to be doing the job. But then everybody will say, well, why do you not change? And the point is why should they change? That would be.
And I guess, like you say, like some people have said, well, that's on him. He sold Højbjerg and all this stuff. It doesn't sound like it really works like that anymore. It sounds like he'll go, these players, I'm not bothered about being in the squad.
Yeah.
If you can get rid of them, great. And if I really don't need them, I'll put them to the under-21s or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But I need the players of this. And then what might happen is they might sell a Højbjerg, who would now be a useful player for him.
Yeah, exactly.
And then he says, I need a Højbjerg replacement though. But the club fails to do that. And he's there going, I'm more frustrated than any of you fans, trust me. I asked for a number 6 and I didn't get one. But they sold my old number 6. So I'm there now trying to adapt, and you're kind of pointing the finger at me. But it sounds like the modern structure is more like that, where you, as the manager, you don't... Yeah.
I think the biggest thing there, James, is, so if I go back to Celtic, we had some top number 6s. Callum McGregor, captain. James McCarthy, who played in the Premier League, couldn't get a game. We had some Japanese player, Ideguchi, with a Scandinavian player, Abelgard. These guys were top draw. But Ange he liked them as players, but he never played certain ones because they couldn't control the game that he wanted. Because he's not about sitting off. He wants to control the game with a player who keeps the ball. So the problem for me is I'm looking at the Leicester game and Harry Winks controls the game. And as an ex-Spurs player, that's a frustrating one for me. Oliver Skip's maybe a little bit different. He's a little bit Scott Parker. He can tackle, he can pass, but we're maybe missing the type players that can do a little bit of everything. But I think that's the tough thing. Listen, if we'd got Gallagher was a Pochettino player, but would have been top drawer for Tottenham. I think he would have been in the box scoring goals, but he's aggressive. As you said, maybe Højbjerg liking that physicality, but goals young. So I think that's where the recruitment is the problem, because to play Ange's style, you need the back 4 to be squeezing up and going for it. Because if they win the ball higher up, you're further away from your goal. Simple as that. That is the route.
Yeah.
It's the old adage of, well, how do you concede less goals? Well, if we get the ball further away from the goal, we concede less. But the problem is it becomes a foot race because players are maybe not doing the job. So you've seen at the weekend, the distance between midfield and back 4 are too big. Because the midfield, we're in the right positions in the right places. That's players. And Ange will just get new players in, but at the moment he's not been able to get someone. So that's a tough one for him. That's what I think why he works best. He works well in the transfer market, recruiting players, but I would be looking at the transfers and going, some have worked, some have not. But is he getting everything that he wants? That's where I'd be looking at, because you can... So Mauricio's first year, 2 year 3 that the team grew. It wasn't because of the signings. And I know that people moan about the money that was made from Bale. But Nasser Chadli was a vital player. Christian Eriksen was a vital player, and so was Lamela under Pochettino. You know, like they 3 players were actually for 10, 12 million, whatever. They were gems. Eriksen in his prime at Tottenham was, come on, what a player. You know, Eric Lamela was top draw, you know.
Yeah. It's Lamela divides opinion. Just shout out to HG there.
Yeah.
But it's his work rate. And I'd heard this when I spoke to Hamish Carlton, who's kind of the Celtic TV guy. I don't know if you know him, and he was saying what's surprising about the differences in Ange's tenure at Celtic versus Spurs was, well, you of course you know better. You were at Celtic, but working with these players, he signed players who were like the personalities you're mentioning, the Gallagher personalities, that they're not necessarily super technical primary attribute players. They are dogged fighters and leaders.
Yeah.
And he looks for those players but whereas at Spurs, that profile of player hasn't typically been signed. You look at talented players like Brennan Johnson, he's the opposite to a Lamela, right? In terms of, just trying to S-house your way through a game by being, all gritty and nipping around at other people's ankles. But do you think we need those kind of signs? Have you noticed a different profile type when Ange signs?
I think there is. I'm looking here at Celtic, so that in the first transfer window, he brought 10 players in. And that 10 players, Joe Hart, Furuhashi, Jota, that was the Cameron Carter-Vickers, that was the mainstay of the team. He brought in 10 players. Next transfer window, Dawson Maeda, Rio Hitati, Matt O'Reilly, they were outstanding. So in his first 2 windows, he's rebuilt his team. And that team was fit, strong. So that Dawson Maeda, one of the top physical output Premier League, but can do it every game. Whereas that's the little bit of, I think the players that from Japan were 24 and over. So like that Kyogo, 25, 26, like he's doing with the players at Tottenham. But I think he didn't buy young players. Archie Gray, the goalkeeper Kinski, these are going to be great players, but you're going to have to wait a few years to get that level. It happens, remember, go back to Tottenham under Camoli, all the young players. Kevin Prince Boateng was a very good player, but not at Tottenham. Adel Tara, not at Tottenham. They moved on because it took a few years for them to get there. So I definitely think there's, within the signings, there is a mix. You can see what Tottenham's doing. You can see Ange's players. I think Timo Werner, I thought when he came in, we played against him at Red Bull for Celtic, and you're going, you can see the idea, hard-working player. But because he's called him out, he's disappointed. He's a senior player. And you've just said it, at Celtic, the senior players stepped up. But what I would say the difference at Celtic was won nine league titles. 10 years getting into that 1 year. So the history of leaders at the club, Callum McGregor, Greg Taylor, Nir Beaton, Tom Rogic, a culture of that, he then was able to quickly correct it. At Tottenham, we know when we won the last trophy, that's a different, and that's where he needs time to get that mentality into the club. Like Jurgen Klopp took 5 years to win the league, you know, if that was the case.
Well, yeah, this is a part of it. And when we were first linked to Ange, we did an episode and we'd spoken to a coach in the SPL, and he'd said, he was actually, you probably know him, I'll send you his details after, but he actually would have worked at Celtic same time of you, Scotty. But he was saying that and where am I going with this now? Again, I'm having a massive mind blank with it. With Ange, the biggest reasons he would fit Spurs over other great names that were linked, like De Zerbi, is he is all about changing to a winning culture, and you have to have that big, no compromising aura about you in order to move a club that has typically, whether we like it or not, over the last 20 years, not gotten things over the line for various reasons. It's not all culture, it's some luck, it's some of it's other, but he has the ability to do that. But it will be extremely painful. And I think everyone accepted the painful bit until they realised painful was more painful than they could have ever imagined because of these injuries we've had and these other issues. But I kind of have this thing of speaking to people like you as well, that he's the man who can still get us there. And he is the bigger victim than all of us to these injuries. When you hear about, it's not him rehabilitating these players or who signed a lot of these guys in the first place. Like Richarlison's injury, he came on, did one run, kicked the ball for an assist, and went off injured. Like, if he's told that player's fit to play and he gets injured on the first sprint, surely that's not on the manager.
No, the thing is on that, the players need to be fit to train. So under Mauricio and Ange, two very different ways of training. You get the same output, you get the same end product. But under Mauricio, you had to work like a dog. We trained 5 days a week. There was lots of gym, there was lots of running, there was lots of work, and it was survival of the fittest. Like with Ange, it's survival of the fittest, but in a purely football way. He doesn't want running. It's all with the ball. It always starts with the ball. So he is all about that. So again, the players have to adapt. But as you say, it's about recruitment. But, Tottenham, they've got the staff. So the question is I'm sure, like Daniel have done, they will look at it. Why is this happening? Why are they getting re-injuries? There can be simple explanations. You've got to look at, in my experience, I was new into the job. A young man, in my remit for the 5 years after, was never to get a re-injury. In the 5 years post that, let me tell you, they were very good on hamstring re-injuries because that is the life and death of you as a fitness coach. Because if you don't get them returning and available, you're out of job. Like we've done it with Harry Kane for big games. It's very difficult, and they've got top staff, they've got people, but it's how much is it important to the club? Are they paying the best of the best to do the job, or is it a young guy? I don't know who, because they've obviously got jobs going at the moment. They've got, I think, a head of medical job. There's a fitness coach.
Go on, Anton. You make a return, mate. You check me out in the ring.
I'm a little bit old for that now. Listen, it's a great job. And that's why I've done it for 6 years. It was you're playing football every day with international superstars. What better job as a Tottenham fan? I think you would have everybody want to do that, and then they realise how tough it is to be a Premier League football player. But they will get through it. But what they've got to do is they can't, if Van de Ven's back, the question is, does he play tomorrow? And if anything happens, it'll explode. The point is he needs to get through the game. But also, can he manage himself? You know, that's the thing. Michael Dawson, Ledley King, Jonathan Woodgate, Kabul, they guys know how to manage games. You know, I'll give you one story. We're playing Liverpool. We won 2-1. I think Bale might have scored, White Hart Lane. And AVB was like, we play for the back, we build. And Dawson went, no, squeeze, get the line up and we'll go long. Because he, as a player, experienced player, was like, we're under too much. We can't cope with this. We won the game, but it was really interesting because as a player, he took the leadership of, we're listening to the manager, respect him, but we need to do other things. And I wonder as well with the players, you know, are they doing the right things for the manager? I think not every player at the moment is on top for him. And I think that kills the manager. They need to be, you said it earlier, the character of the player. You know, so are people, are they giving in? Or are they standing up and saying, hey, let's go and win some games here, roll the sleeves up, we'll get through a game, you know, rather than being 2-0 up and then it's 2 each. We've got to do simple things. And that's where at Celtic, they had some top players that were able to do that. And that was, again, because they've been at the club many years and they've dealt with success, so they know what's required.
Interesting. And should we go just a little trip down memory lane then and asking about some of your, some people would love to hear, is, yes, you worked under ABB, Redknapp, Sherwood,
yes,
and Pochettino, and obviously Ange at Celtic. But who was your, which one would you say, you know, you had your best relationship with or most enjoyable spell with, and why?
Every manager was good in some sense. You know, like Harry coming into the team, larger than life. You got to see what the guy was all about. It's all about recruitment, all about getting players. So like Harry was excellent to watch. AVB from taking the club in its first sort of step forwards to a not saying modern, but a modern coaching style. You know, like planning. You've seen the session plan. You've seen the periodisation. Under Harry, it was very different, bit more British old school. Get good players in the pitch, and they've done it themselves. Whereas AVB was the first guy to come in with a sledgehammer and really step things up. But I think the problem was it had went too far because they'd been with Harry, and then you went to the far side. When Tim came in, you can never complain what Tim done from a youth development because he's the guy that for me came through, and he brings through some top young players. So if you don't have had Tim Sherwood, Soldado still plays ahead of Harry Kane. And you've got to give Tim a huge credit for being brave to play the players. And Mauricio, I think, then through AVB, through Tim and through Harry, was the guy that brought everything together. The sports science for us was fantastic because the Portuguese style is not very sports science. It's not that way inclined. Under Harry, he was a little bit more old school British manager, even though we had the right tools and the right people, but the full backing of it. Whereas under Mauricio, Jesus Perez brought all that together. You know, we were one of the fittest teams, we were one of the best coached teams. You know, we had some great injury records. So under Mauricio, it was like, you know, he brought it and he brought people to elite standards. We all thought Tottenham was a big club and it was, we're doing well. But when he came in, it was a shock. Wow. We went from, I think, bottom of the league running stats to top of the league within 2 years because he made his work. So that was really, for me, it was an outstanding 5 years working with Jesus Mauricio because also Jesus was a performance specialist in his own right, but was the assistant manager. So for us, there was a real understanding. He understood the language of fitness, but also football. We had some great staff, Nathan Gardiner. So he was, listen, under Mauricio, we were as scientific as you want. You know, we were ahead of the game. We were on top of lots of things. But the outside thing was he wasn't very much like that, which was a real smart way because if you are too sciencey, they're doing this and doing that. So Mauricio was outstanding with his staffing. Like Ange gave us 5 trophies. I worked at my boyhood club, so you know, being able to do that. That was a real. I always wanted to work at Celtic as a young kid, and that was a great thing to be able to do. But it was a different way. So you respect everyone because not one person is right. Nobody does it the same way. But it was to be able to work with all of them were excellent. There was no ultimate favourite. There's all happy times.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And I just wanted to, we were talking before the show, though, about players who work hard in training. And I will ask you 2 questions. One is, who during your time at Spurs was, you know, the hardest worker in training But also, I want to just touch on Dele Alli because we've all got such a soft spot for him. And before the show, you were saying it's a good time to debunk a myth that his career went down because he was lazy in the end. But you're
Listen,
saying he was one of the hardest workers at the club?
Listen, Dele Alli was, I think, a victim of the Amazon prime. Everybody gets it, all the clubs. Somebody's painting a bad way. Danny Rose may be the same. But Dele Alli as a guy was a really genuine, honest person. Bubbly, energetic, would do anything to help you. That wasn't a big time Charlie. Would never say that. Was a hard worker. Was a free spirit. That he's one of the guys. He just played football like you do in the park. He would do stuff that you go, no chance. Bang, scores a goal. But, when Dele came in, so Dele was signed, I think, in the January transfer window, obviously from MK Dons. But what actually happened was, because obviously the season finishes early, League One at the time, they would be finished end of April. Dele came in for a month and trained with myself while the team were still training because he was registered as their player. But also to get him up to speed for how hard it was under Mauricio. The running, the gym. And there was runs that we used to do called Gacons. It's very famous with Mauricio wherever he went because it was like intense running drill, whether you were injured, post-match, you had to be very fit. And when Dele came in, he was absolutely smashing the Gacons. And you're working with him and you're saying to people, this guy's fitter than the lot is because he's doing the times in ridiculous timing. So look, when we would come back to pre-season testing, we would do the Gacon test. Dele Alli was the guy that was finishing it, or the highest level at the club. So Dele was naturally very fit. I think his position allowed him to do that, but was tarnished with lazy, maybe under different managers. Now, he might have had that. He might have the body, that could be body language. Adel Tara was labelled lazy, but was a fantastic football player. Moussa Dembele, you speak to all Spurs fans and players, was world class. But Moussa could try to get Moussa Dembele. He wanted to always train every day, and it was a nightmare because he was so talented. But when he turned up, he's the only player that I could see. I think it was Liverpool. He hadn't played in weeks, whether he was injured or out of favour, and comes back in and we beat Liverpool. The only player that I can see can turn on the talent with a switch. But again, Dele, guys like Moussa, these guys were top players, but they were physically very good. Moussa Dembele, if he gave the ball away, I think it was on the record that he was one of the best at regaining the ball. So the question is, at the current team, who's the players that regain the ball if they lose it? Because that's the whole point of Ange's counter-press and how he trains. So if you've not got players, so is Bissouma winning the ball back, is Sa, is Maddison. So if they're not doing that, they're not doing their job with and without the ball, So I think there was the players, as I say, were outstanding players. And I think it's harshly treated, as we said about Besiktas earlier. It might have been different Dele's time at Besiktas if he's there 6 months later with people who know myself, Brad Friedel, people who know his history, what he's about. But again, Besiktas is a tough club to go to. And hence, that's why they've sacked many managers. That's why I'm speaking to you, because they've sacked managers,
Yeah. And by the way, did you say Friedel's a Spurs fan?
Yeah, it's obviously, listen, I think he's obviously a big Spurs fan at heart. He's obviously been at Villa, Blackburn, Liverpool, he holds everything. He obviously started his coaching career working at the younger levels. So he's very Spurs orientated, and he loved working with Mauricio. His style as a manager was very similar, how we trained, how we played, had a similar way. Hence the reason why I went and worked with Brad over in America, because it was a Tottenham style regime.
And I have to ask another player, actually. One of the favourite kind of characters that's gone through Spurs was Benoit Assou Ekotto.
Wow.
Is it true that this guy used to rock up in a smart car, take the tube, and didn't like football?
No, let me debunk a myth, right? He portrayed that he doesn't love the game, but he was one of the guys. So, for example, there was lots of stories. I can tell them now because it's a decade old. I remember, I think it was AVB. We were in Singapore, I think Hong Kong for pre-season, and we're training at a cricket ground, and the changing area was like on holiday, plastic chairs, and he would be sitting, coming in with like a bowl of cereal or an ice cream, like a Magnum, sitting just to antagonise the manager, to try and wind him up. That's the sort of guy he was, but he was doing it to be like a disruptor.
Yeah.
That was his style. But this guy did care. Listen, you can't play at the level he played. So if the players, he'd be one of the players, old school. I'm not doing that for training. You're in the gym, not doing it. Give him 2 hours later, he'd be in the gym probably doing it himself. That was the sort of, or he'd be doing it at home. He liked the confrontation. Very smart guy. If you actually spoke to him, I spoke to him lots because I spent a lot of time with him when he was injured. Very educated, parents were teachers, very smart person. You know, people don't realise the levels that he played at. He was a fantastic player, but I think there was a little bit of gamesmanship. He liked as well to say, I don't like it, but liked a little bit of the attention. He had a smart car, I think, because of the congestion charges in London, so he would avoid that. You know, but he done it. But look, he was a fantastic player. Look, to try and get him to work, God, it was a nightmare. You know, that we would do stuff, I think, when AVB, because he had a bad knee injury. That was hence the reason he could play for like a year, 2 years. And to get him to work was a nightmare. So we used to do like free kicks. He would say, I'm a number 10. And literally, you know, like you put like 10 balls round the D and you would put a pole and say, right, go and hit the free kick, run round the pole. That's the stuff you had to do to get him to work.
And he did score a great free kick, if I remember correctly, actually. I think
listen, he had a great left foot. Listen, he had one of the nightmare as a practitioner to work with. So I had a knee injury, that's why I stopped playing, that wasn't any good. So that when you played football with him, it was like a cannonball getting put to you, regardless if it was a 5 metre pass, 10 metres, bang, deal with that. And he was a funny guy, really good pro, and was a very good player for Tottenham. So I think he was part of he was a maverick. He was a character, like many players that were under Harry, very big characters.
Yeah, interesting. That's. I was going to ask as well about Lasanagate, but I think that was way past your time. I was going to ask you, do you believe the conspiracy theory? Someone around the club.
Listen, I like a conspiracy, so I would never say never, because I think having been in Glasgow, the Old Firm, these things do happen. Clubs don't want it. I think probably it was something very simple, but I think obviously it happens at clubs. Sickness diarrhea is sickness bugs. We had it at Tottenham many times. Place had to be shut down at times. I think at Spurs Lodge, but you do everything you can to protect players. You know, so you do everything to do the right things. But I think it's just unfortunate. But Spurs, hence the Spursy target we all get is, you know, that when Chelsea knock us out of 4th place, you know, and the AVB comes in that summer. As manager, it was crazy, you know, because we still have been playing Champions League that year, but we don't. So that's tough.
And do you still stay in touch with any of the old Spurs players? You mentioned Brad. You still hang out from time to time?
Who else? I'm trying to think of. Listen, one of the rule of thumbs at Tottenham was I worked for the club and I worked for players. I wasn't necessary. It sounds really terrible. I wasn't like a player's friend, because at the end of the day in football, they've got a job to do. I was, you know, for example, Hugo Lloris, Victor Wanyama, I would send him the odd message. Harry Kane, obviously in the years leaving, you would send a message because I'd worked with him from a young age all the way through. So his first team, all his loans, I was with him on the journey. So you would message them, but again, listen, I was older than them. So like that, it's different. You sort of, you know, Scott Parker, you know Scott Parker was going to be a top manager from the minute he walked in the club as I think a 31, 32-year-old. You know, these guys were like tops. So again, I don't keep in contact with him, and even Brad, even though that I've worked with him twice, it's not like you're on the phone and meeting up for coffees. It's literally the work with you. Yeah, they're colleagues, and the respect if you do a good job and you've got standards and you've got good work ethics. Hence the reason why Brad's phoned us up twice. Would you come and work with us? Because he knows the standards that you bring. Like Ange employing us at Celtic. He employed us because I'd worked at other places and brought success under change management, which he's trying to do, obviously, Tottenham.
So I have one final question then. Do you think Ange will still be our manager end of the season, and will he turn around?
I think yes, for the reason being, if you look at all the last 10, 15 years with Daniel, the manager would be gone by now. I think AVB, we got, I think, 5th in his first year. We were close to Champions League. Second season, little bit of like crack showed, and then bang, he went. Whereas I think that shows why he's brought Ange to the club. They are sticking to the plan, and I think there is no better man to get us through it at the moment, because he is very resilient in the face of adversity. He will get through, not changing, because, and he says it, I think, time and time again, it's so easy when things are not going well in life that you change and you do something different. Stick to your beliefs. Stick to the way that you know that it'll work. And I think he'll get that. And hopefully, over the next, 2 weeks, once we get down to a game a week, we're in maybe a final and we've knocked out Villa. Hopefully, then the tide will have turned. And then you'll see the avalanche of the energy come back. And I think that's the little bit. I think last year, I'm not saying we got lucky, but there was, I think on the stats, we were overachieving last year for that winning streak,
Well, this is the key. I think so much actually depends on against the game against Elfsborg, because if Spurs win that, they didn't have to do the playoffs in Europa.
Correct.
And they get to mid-February. There's a week break for the first time in ages, and about 6 players are due back that week.
Correct.
So suddenly, the mental boost of having those players back on the pitch with you and having a few players you can rotate with and a week's break. I just think it'd be crazy. Even if I get it, if you're listening to this and Ange isn't the guy for you, that's fine. Like, not everyone's going to align with a certain manager and all that stuff, but you may as well give him the next 3 to 4 weeks to show you, look, I can turn this around. If you were to get a new manager in now, you'd have 2 weeks of the club searching, 2 or 3 weeks. A new person comes in just as all these players come back, and it just gives a false perception of suddenly everything's fixed and in growth. But weirdly, you've just put Ange through all the pain and chopped his head off before giving him a chance to show there's an upside to all that pain he went to get us there. That's my opinion anyway.
At Celtic, you look at it, when I joined the club in September, he'd lost 3 games already at Celtic. If you lose 3 games at Celtic, you could lose your job. We were, I think, 6-9 points behind Rangers going into the winter break. But the signings that he made, we won the League Cup the week before it. We dropped some points as well after the League Cup. But after that, we had a winter break. We got fit. We got them all back. We were missing our star striker as well, which people forget. But we went on an unbelievable run and won the league. So it's one of these ones. Trophies are not won in January or October. They're won in March, May. And at the end of the day, we're still in the hunt for trophies. I think it will be tough. Europa League is a very tough league. But, listen, how do you win games and win trophies? You've got to score goals. You've got to keep clean sheets. And I think we will get there eventually with patience.
Yeah, I still find it mad we've got the best away defensive record in the Premier League, I believe, which goes completely against the narrative that the system means you can't defend. It's the home defensive issues, but I do put a lot of that down to, yes, there's some bits of everyone can see Pedro Porro always stranded up too high and back post, but it is a lot of it is the players aren't.
It's the players.
Yeah.
I'll give you one player, and it's nothing a matter. So Archie Gray is a centre half. So if Ange wants to play a high line, and I think you see in some of the games on the TV, Archie Gray's maybe too deep at times. And I think in one of the games, if Archie Gray was a yard higher, it was one of the crosses that goes in. It's maybe not. It might be offside. But he may be keeping the players on. So, but Ange's having to trust an 18-year-old midfielder. So I think that's why he gives it, look, what else can I do? But when he's got Romero and he's got Van de Ven and he's got the players back, it will be a different proposition. I think it's very positive. So fingers crossed.
I hope this works out for Ange. And I think a lot of us fans, some people are just, with football, all of us actually with football, I say some people, all of us with football, the thing is, it's such an emotional sport. The level of depth, you've got fully grown men like me who have converted a room in their house into some kind of Spurs shrine, spend all their free time talking about Spurs, hyper-analysing human beings who will probably never meet in your life. I'm going to get emotional when the club's not doing well. And the first, you can blame 2 people initially. It's either a player or the manager. And you typically start with the manager as your first point of call. And I know there's conversation about ownership and all that stuff as well. But that person always bears the brunt of the blame when results aren't going your way. But results aren't just on the manager. They are on the other, say, hundreds of employees that a club like Spurs has that are all centered around trying to make that team successful. And there is luck in sport. That's what makes football so great. These moments of randomness that you can't control. It could be Spurs next. We saw when Liverpool won the league. I just thought when Liverpool and Arsenal had their really strong seasons, they both crashed out the domestic cups in the 3rd round. And they played their first team every single week. And then we saw what happened the next season with Liverpool when they lost Van Dijk to a 6-month injury. Oh, they come 7th or 8th or whatever it was. And you're like,
that's one player.
That's one player. You do need the right ideas, the right philosophy, the right leaders, the right players, but you do need a little bit of fortune on the way as well.
100%. 100%. And I think that will come once it settles down. The football will settle down. Let me tell you, it will become more controlled. I think the biggest thing is he needs help in this transfer window. 1 or 2 loan players to maybe just help them over the line. But the point is the club going to go and get 1 or 2 loan players that are going to help them?
It's just, yeah, it just makes you wonder why still someone that we've brought on this big structure of, focused around the recruitment, and there's just Ange there, almost like on a lifeboat out at sea going, help me, shooting up his flare. And they're kind of saying, just after I've finished my tea and biscuits on the shore, you're like, come on, please.
But he can cope with it. Yeah. He's the one manager that I've worked with, and you go, he can cope. He's not going to shuck and disappear and blame people. Bang, he'll keep going doing what he's doing. So watch this space.
Well, Anton, this has been an awesome conversation. Thank you so much. I'd love to borrow you again sometimes if you're up for it and you have the time for us. Awesome, mate. Well, we always finish with an up the Spurs. So up the Spurs.
Up the Spurs.
Roll on midweek, and let's hope Ange turns us all around.
Top stuff. Much appreciated, James.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you.